Okay, so Unscripted is here again. And if I were to say to you that we can talk about in one conversation with one truly interesting, truly awesome human being, everything from semiconductors to the Texas Longhorns to fishing to grandparenthood. If you're not thinking of the guy I'm thinking of, you need to watch the next 60 minutes. So it is my sincere pleasure to bring in my friend, Jay Thompson, who needs no introduction, but I'm introducing you anyway. Brother, thank you for coming on. Welcome to Unscripted.
It's great to be here, Phil, and good to see you, brother.
Likewise. And we both got water in the background. You've got the fish. I got the guy in a boat. You know, we neither one of us have a fake background. So for those who have been living under a rock for 20 years, many moon ago, I stumbled upon something called the Celsius Real Estate Blog. And there was a guy we both knew and loved who, was, there he is, our friend Joe. Yep. And a common commenter there was this guy, the Phoenix real estate guy. And wasn't too long after my brokerage started in 2005. I think you started yours in 2007, 2006, 2008. Not sure. Where one of my bucket list goals was to meet you and even collaborate with you, which I got to do. So there's a lot to cover here. Military brat, right?
Yeah.
You grew up military brat.
Yep.
Went to St. Edmunds University in Austin. Became a Longhorn fan. Am I right?
St. Edward's University.
Edward. Sorry.
Claim to fame, founded by the same bunch of friars or whatever that founded Notre Dame.
Okay. So I forgot the name of their order, but it'll come to me. Holy Cross Fathers could be. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Not Jesuits, not Augustinians. How many years were you in Austin, college, etc.? Would you say?
Oh gosh, I moved to Austin pretty much right after high school. I did one semester at Texas A&M in Galveston, and going to college on the beach, it was not a good idea when I was 18 years old. So then I went to Austin, went to UT right after that, and so I moved to Austin in about 1980, and lived there for the most part. There were some work stints that took me away for 20 years.
Gotcha.
That's why Austin is home to me. The before mentioned Army brat thing. Army brats don't really have a home, right? But I've called Austin home since 1980.
Yeah.
It's home to me.
And how far are you from Austin now, would you say?
It's about a 3.5 hour drive.
In Texas, that's a commute.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yes, it's not a license to be stupid. Thank you, Emmy. So my brother lived in Austin for about 20 years. We rode on Town Lake. As a matter of fact, I have a picture, sports graphics of him on Town Lake. So your Austin to me is Philly, sort of like a second home.
Yep.
I however, never became a fan of anything Philly because being a New Yorker, they killed me. Right.
Oh, yeah, sure. You wouldn't be here today.
So no, I wouldn't. So, people's philosopher, you said a couple of things. College beach, bad idea. Another wise thing that you said to me once is never propose when you're drunk.
I did that once.
I know.
Not the current marriage.
I know.
Before that, that's a really bad idea.
But do you know how like little aphorisms like that stick with a person? Like, don't propose marriage when you're drunk. I'm going to remember that, etc. So the first career, because we all know no one goes to college for real estate, right?
No.
It's the accidental career.
Yep.
My career, sales publishing, nothing to do with dirt, land. Your career, semiconductors.
Semiconductors. I was what they call a fab rat. I worked in a semiconductor manufacturing facility for almost 2 decades for both Motorola and Intel. And
Gotcha.
it's a weird business. It's super cyclical. You know, it's more cyclical than real estate or anything else on the planet. And crazy competitive, stupidly expensive. The main fabrication plant I worked in for Motorola, I helped start up what was called Moss 11, and it was state of the art technology. You know, semiconductor technology changes faster than anything, manufacturing technology, and it cost $1 billion, $1,019,090 to build that factory and equip it. And you know, we're processing these batches of semiconductors that are literally worth tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars, that if you do the wrong thing to them anywhere in this couple hundred step process, they become garbage. And so it's super stressful, but man, I met some amazing people there. You know, it was formative years. I did all kinds of jobs. I started as a graveyard shift production operator, making $3.50 an hour, which was well over minimum wage at the time.
Well over minimum wage.
Well over minimum. I had benefits. I'm like, benefits, vacation time, sick time, health insurance, all this cool stuff. And did that for a really, really long time. And then the big cycle flipped. I got into human resources, and about a year after that, all we started doing was shutting down factories and laying people off. I personally exited, laid off, delivered the message that people were losing their job to about 3,100 employees over about a year time span, which is brutal, right? I mean, I had grown men that have been at the company for 30 years crying in my office going, what am I going to do? This is all I've ever done. And I'm like, I don't know. Here's your box. We'll go pack up your desk and good luck. And then, of course, it happened to us. So,
yeah, that is, that's got to be one of the worst feelings in the world, to tell a guy that his career is over.
It was horrible. Like every Monday I would open my office door and I'd peek in to see if there was a list on my desk, a list of names, and invariably there was. And I'm looking through there, and some of these people I'd worked with side by side, elbow to elbow for 20 years, you know, and I'm just the messenger. I mean, I'm not the one that makes the decisions. It's all business driven.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're not performance related layoffs. It's a body count. And it was brutal.
It's just bean counter bullshit.
Yeah.
So I got two thoughts. First of all, we talked about our friend Anthony Lamacchia, and he did a video very recently about Mondays. If you hate Mondays, you're in the wrong field.
Yeah.
You are no longer in semiconductors, because that would be a bad Monday every Monday, right?
Every Monday was a bad Monday for over a year. And it's just, I appreciate the time. I still have contact with a lot of the people there are in that business, but I'm so glad I'm out of it.
All right. So second thought I have, one of my very, very favorite musicians, and you and I may have had this conversation years ago, is Jim Croce.
I love Jim Croce.
Absolutely. And for people of a certain age, he is the voice of an era. And one of the things that made his work so incredibly relatable was that this guy was a truck driver. He was a construction guy. He was crawling through basements doing blue collar work. He spent some time in the service, and that instructed his point of view when he wrote songs. They resonated with regular folks. One of the things that makes a human being human, one of the things that makes a good person, in my experience, is someone who's had a background where they have been out there and worked elbow to elbow with regular folks. And that makes you, in some ways, very Croce-like, because you have done some stuff over the years that has made you the common man's hero in this industry, right?
Well, thanks, Phil. And to be compared to Jim Croce in any way is quite a compliment.
Well, it's well earned. Look, you got to have thick skin too, because, you know, right? And we'll get into that stuff. So semiconductor thing goes away, right? You're out of there. And how do you get into real estate? How does that occur?
That's a great question. I had two friends, a couple that was a friend of my wife and ours, that had gotten into real estate maybe a year or so prior, and as well as anybody else, it takes a while to get the wheels rolling and when you start in real estate. So their wheels have been rolling for a while. And so they were starting to be successful in their real estate business. And I was so turned off to corporate America and the bureaucracy and the man and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, what am I going to do? I got a pretty nice severance package. So we had some padding and some space there where I didn't have to go find a job the next day. Thank goodness. Right. And, my wife and I just talked a lot, and we said, hey, look at Gary and Shannon. They started in real estate. They struggled for a while, but now things are starting to roll. What if we tried real estate? What the heck? Like I said, I'd worked in human resources. So and the human psychology and behavior has always fascinated me. I mean, since I was a kid. And so much of real estate is just dealing with, being a therapist, basically. So there was a pretty good fit, as odd as it might sound, between semiconductor manufacturing and real estate. There was a lot of overlap, a lot of technology. So I wasn't afraid of technology. And I thought, you know what, we'll give this a whirl. We've got enough money where we can feed the children for a year or so. We don't have to sell anything, which is a good place and probably the right place to be if you're going to try to make real estate a career or have some savings. So we did it. And, in Arizona, I was in Arizona at the time, you have to be licensed as a salesperson for 3 years before you can take your broker classes and sit for the broker exam.
3 years
as a licensee.
It's 1 year in New York.
Is it? And now there's places where you start off with a broker's license. But that was our original plan. We're going to get licensed. We're going to hang our license at this Century 21 office where Gary and Shannon worked, because the broker was good, been around forever, seemed like he could help us and teach us and mentor us. And then 3 years later, we would start our own independent brokerage. That was the plan from day one. I told the broker that I'm going to get my broker's license in 3 years and start my own brokerage. He was like, yeah, sure you are, whatever, come on board. And that's what we did. So almost 3 years to the day, I got my broker's license, and we started the aptly named Thompson's Realty in Gilbert, Arizona.
We don't really have very creative names in naming our companies, do we?
I thought about it a lot, and Z's and X's and Y's and .coms was really hot back then. And I had people tell me, you could never sell your brokerage if it's got your name on it. And I'm like, well, Keller Williams is doing all right. Coldwell Banker's doing all right. Those are all named after dudes, people.
Right.
And I didn't really care. It was our brokerage, and then we were the Thompsons, and therefore it became Thompson's Realty. Plus, ThompsonRealty.com was kind of available as a domain name.
That doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt. I found the same thing. And the thing about, you can't sell your brokerage if it's named after you. I found the opposite. I found that if you name your brokerage like, Super Guy or Integrity or Honesty Realty, it just makes it sound like an aspiration and not really like a fulfillment.
I think that's legit. I also, from day one, people are like, you have no brand recognition whatsoever. People are going to go, who the hell is Thompson's Realty? And rightfully so. And you're going to lose business because you're not with Century 21 or Remax, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't think so. And I noted time after time, I can't tell you how many people I sat across the table from and that said, we started looking at you because your family, this is clearly your brokerage. It's got your name on it. You're not the big giant corporation. You're clearly putting your life into your named brokerage. So that's why we want to work with you. Now, of course, what I'll never know is how many people never called or never reached out because they didn't know the brand. But it certainly didn't stop us from being successful. Thompson's Realty was the thing I'm the proudest of in that brokerage. Two things. One, it was profitable every single month except for month number one because there's some costs. And two was our almost complete lack of voluntary turnover in agents. It was several years before the first person left I let some go that didn't work out. But
yeah, that's different.
Yeah, that's different. That's a completely different kind of turnover. We had, it took several years before the first agent voluntarily said, I'm going to go try something else, which of course is fine. That's part of the business. But yeah, so
there will never be a metric on who doesn't call you. That's for sure. But you're still standing, right?
Yeah.
It grew. It was profitable. So, you don't argue with success. I had, very similar things. You start out with zero. Who's Jay Phil? All that stuff. But, you start to get traction and people start watching and lurking and, paying attention. At what point did it hit you that it would be wise to start expressing yourself in the written word?
That's a really good question. I've always loved to write. I mean, when I was a kid, like the teacher would go, I need a 500-word essay on whatever. I'd be like, is it cool if I do 1,000 words? And my friends would be like, what is wrong with you? And so I've always loved to write. And so I blogged back when this has been, late 90s, early 2000s, when really blogs were just pretty much personal journals.
Yep.
That's all a blog really was back then, for the most part. And I did one of those. Plus, I've always been kind of a geek at heart, so I wanted to tinker around with building a website. So I built some personal blog. I don't even remember the name of it now. And then I was literally sitting in my broker's office. I did floor time. I told the administrative assistant, because they had a physical office, and you could sit in the front of the office with a desk and a computer and answer the phone, because the broker ran ads in the newspaper, and that made the phone ring. And if you worked the phone, you could get the lead.
Yeah.
And it was on a specific listing. And so I told the admin there, I said, I will take every floor time shift you can't fill. If someone bails out of floor time, call me and I'll be here in 20 minutes. And so I did a lot of that. And I'm sitting at this computer, and some of the agents would play solitaire on the computer while they were at floor time. I worked on my website, and I just decided I ran across Rain City Guide, which was at the time, a Seattle blog, real estate blog, run by Dustin Luther and Ardell DeLogia.
Still around.
And it's still around.
Yeah.
I think it's still around. I haven't looked in a long time. It's around in some form.
Yep.
And
well, Dustin is.
you know what? I love to write. I'm sitting here at this desk all the time. I need something to do. I've got to try to generate some sales. I wonder if I started pontificating about real estate, is there a way to turn this into some kind of thing that will lead to business? So that's what I think. That's when Phoenix Real Estate Guy was born. It was originally called BuyGilbertHomes.com. Gilbert was the subdivision of Phoenix I lived in. And I thought, this is genius. Buy Gilbert Homes. That's what I want people to do. Problem is, nobody knows where Gilbert, Arizona is.
Yeah.
And they don't connect it to Phoenix. And so I started poking around, and I thought, wow, it'd be really cool to be the Phoenix Real Estate Guy. And I looked, and of course, the domain name was already taken. But then
really,
it was. And I looked at, did the Who Is search, and this guy that owned it, I knew him through a Home Gain chat forum, right? Home Gain.
I remember Home Gain. Yeah.
And I knew this guy, Steve. I can't remember Steve's last name. That's sad, but it was a long time ago. And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, I don't know why you own, he was in Kansas City. And I'm like, I have no idea why you own PhoenixRealEstateGuy.com. He goes, I've got, city real estate guy domains all over the country. And I'm like, what can I pay you for it? And Steve goes, nothing. I'll give it to you. And I'm like, dude, I'll pay something. I don't have a lot, but you should be compensated. And he's like, I think domain name registration back then was like $4.99 a year.
Yeah.
He goes, well, I just renewed the registration. So, if you want to send me $5, you can do that. But that's all I'll take for it. And because he was just a good, solid, I never met the guy. I still, to this day, never met him face to face. But we worked back then. There was no Facebook, and social media wasn't even really a thing yet. There were these internet user groups.
Yep.
And so that's how I got the Phoenix Real Estate Guy domain name, which was amazing to me that this guy just gave it away. He obviously bought these domains all over the country to try to make some kind of, which is pretty dang smart and had a lot of foresight on his part.
Yes.
So yeah, anyway,
He
I
didn't. He
digress.
didn't. He didn't make much off you, but yeah. Well, but he liked you. I mean, that people do business with people they know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
So, among your many thoughts that you wrote on the blog, one that I will always cherish, and I have co-opted a little bit in different formats, is that at the bottom it would say "powered by WordPress, caffeine, and cursing."
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
and I just loved that, and I know that you grew that through authentic sharing of your thoughts to a lead generator, to a hiring mechanism and a recruiting mechanism, and really a way of raising yourself in stature in the industry, because people wanted to know what you thought of stuff.
It was crazy to me. That blog led to so much stuff, and I think it is all because of what you said. I had the experts would say, dude, you write way too many personal stories on your blog. It should be focused on real estate. But I'm like, it's my blog. It's my voice. It's my outlet, right? I got accused by some jackasses of taking advantage of things. Like, for example, my daughter was in high school band, right? And one morning they were going to the Gilbert Days parade. The band was going to march through downtown Gilbert in a little town parade. And one of the band members was killed by a drunk driver at 6:30 in the morning. That morning, I stood in the auditorium when this band director and the counselor came out to tell these band kids that their bandmate was dead. And it was horrific. The kids are crying, bawling. I'm crying. It was a freaking mess. So I wrote about that a lot on my blog, and these jackasses in the industry said, oh, look at you taking advantage of Kelly Tracy's tragedy to get links and traffic to your blog. And I was like, F you. That's not why I did. You know why I wrote about that? I did it to clear my head, to vent, to an outlet for me, for my brain, because my head was screwed up. Yeah. And writing helped get that out. And I mean, and there's several stories like that. It's usually involving some kind of tragedy, but that being that blog was not just a business outlet for me, but it was a personal outlet as well. But people connected with that. And sure, there were some things that I would later turn into, posts. And I started thinking, okay, here's a perfect example. My cat, may he rest in peace,
Fluffy,
broke his leg one night. He used to jump up on this tower speaker that I had, and it's like 3:00 in the morning. I hear this crashing noise. I thought, okay, we're being robbed, or a meteor's come through the roof. Something bad's happened out in the living room. I go out there, and the speaker's laying across the floor, and the cat's nowhere to be seen. I'm like, oh well, dumbass Buzz the cat jumped up on the speaker and knocked it over. So I went back to bed. Wake up that morning, and the cat is usually standing by its food bowl, right? Like acting like it hasn't eaten in a month. And the cat was nowhere to be found. I'm like, where the hell is Buzz? And I walk out, and he's kind of sitting in a corner of the living room, just laying there, tail switching and just not getting up. And I looked over, and his freaking leg was jacked off to the side. So he jumped. I don't know if the speaker landed on him or he landed. Anyway, broke his leg. So I scoop him up, take him to the vet, and I wrote a blog post because I wanted to praise my veterinarian, right?
Yes.
And to this day, I remember the title of the blog post was "My $600 Cat," because that's what the bill was, and which is annoying in some ways, but I would have paid 10 times that to fix the cat. It was a blog post for my vet, an ad for him, basically unsolicited. Months later, 6-8 months later, there's a buyer in the back of my car. We just met. We're driving to the next house to look at, and he goes, "Oh, by the way, how's your cat?" And I went, my cat? And he goes, "Yeah, I read about your cat's broken leg." I was like, holy crap, that was 6 months ago. You remember that. And the cat was fine. And I'm like, that's when the light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, you know what? People connect with you. And I've said since then, and even a little before then, people pick a real estate agent because they like them.
Yeah.
They enjoy working with them because they appreciate them for whatever reason. I don't know. Was the guy a cat lover? something about that post resonated with him. And 6 months later, a complete stranger to me is asking me how my cat is. I can't tell you how many people would say, wow, you're exactly like what we expected you to be, because we've been reading your blog for months or years or whatever it was. Used to drive my wife crazy, because someone would call the brokerage like, we want to work with Jay, and she's like, yeah, you really don't, because he's not really the best agent. We have amazing agents that would be far better for you to work. No, we want to work with Jay, because they would read the Phoenix real estate guy. That was actually a bit of a problem at times, because at one point the brokerage got successful enough where I didn't have time to sell. Really. And people still, we want to work with you. We want to work with him. And my wife, who I adore, as you know, would be very brutally honest with people. She's like, he's the face of the brokerage. He's a really good writer, and he's an okay agent. Don't get me wrong, but we have better. And she was right.
For example, Francie. Yeah. Like, for example, her.
Francie.
Right.
100%. So
it is really like a cool thing when you realize someone has kind of been lurking on your blog and brings up something that you didn't bring up.
Yeah.
But you care about. Like, for example, I don't remember how this came about, but I had a buyer client buy me 2 big Magnum bottles of Kettle One vodka, because she had read that was the vodka that if I did drink, I would drink Kettle One. And that was really like, you wanted to hug them, they think about this.
It's very cool.
that was what raised your stature, not just to buyers, but it put you on the radar really of just about everybody in the industry, right?
Yeah.
And the brokerage was open how long? 10 years? 7 years? It's still open technically, but
8 to 10 years, depending on how you count.
Right. And going to say the Z word, because that was what was next.
Sure.
Right. So you're brought aboard as Zillow's director of agent industry outreach, right? Is that the
director of industry outreach?
Industry outreach.
Well,
and hey,
one of my favorite.
That is ye old Zillow Agent Advisory Board.
That's the OG advisory board right there.
That is right there. That is right there. And I got to tell you, there's some people in that picture that are really amazing human beings. In that picture right there. Really are. And that was when I think you really had to get thick skin, because at that time, that was when people first winced collectively at Zillow. They were pissed off at the Premier Agent. They were pissed off at the Zestimates. Zillow just was pissing people off. And I learned a long time ago, because I started doing business with Zillow in like 06, 07, and it transformed my business. But people who resist change, Zillow, my thing was, you make friends with the biggest kid in the schoolyard, and Zillow is the biggest kid in the schoolyard right now. But man, the hate on you was brutal.
It was ridiculous too, in a lot of ways. And there's probably there is stuff that people don't even know. But yeah, I was actually, I knew going into that job that there was some disdain in the industry towards Zillow. They had their haters, right? And I'm like, okay, it is what it is. I can deal with that. People always ask me, or frequently ask, what surprised you most about working at Zillow? And there's 2 things. One is the success that some Premier agents had with it, blew me away. And the second thing was the vitriol that some people could spew. I got death threats from people. My family got attacked. My freaking daughter, who was, 2012, she was 16, 17, 18 years old. Yeah. And someone, I'll never forget this. Someone, I don't know if it was a tweet or an email or posted somewhere, but the exact message was, I can find out where your pretty little daughter works and take out my frustrations on her.
Yeah.
People always say, don't take this stuff personally. Hey, you
I did not take that personally.
Believe I took it personally. I was ready to beat the crap out of the guy.
Yeah.
If I could have found out who it was, there would have been some kind of assault thing happening, because he was threatening to rape my daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, over a freaking website? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Is it okay with you if I earn a living, pal?
Yeah. I mean, just,
right.
I had a heart attack right after I started at Zillow, and
remember that
came back a month later, and someone said, hey, how about you do us all a favor and have another heart attack? Maybe next time the results will be different. Okay, well, the result of my heart attack was I survived it. If you want it to be different, you want me to die because I work for Zillow, or whoever I work. I don't know that I've ever wished anybody dead for who they work for.
No. It's a
crazy.
business decision.
Yeah.
And you have every right to do what honest and legal work to support your family, and that was nuts. And it really spoke to, in my opinion, the worst of this industry, which is the curmudgeons who can't handle change and want things to be the way they were. And even when they were the way they were, they weren't the way they were in their memory. Right.
Yep. 100%.
So, you start to, do a good job over there. I don't know if it was your idea to have the agent advisory board, if you were in the room when they came up with the idea, but I remember writing an email to Spencer Raskoff, and it was a Magna Carta. And I was responding to him saying, that's when Jay's Army was born. Just saying, I think you're kind of taking the wrong approach here. Telling agents that are already annoyed with you that they're not exercising their fiduciary responsibilities by listing their houses on Zillow is kind of the wrong approach. Why don't you take a more positive approach? Like, this is how we can help you. And I wrote him a long email.
Yep.
And this is the kind of guy Spencer was. He wrote me 3 emails back over the course of a week saying, I haven't forgotten about you. I'll get back to you. And then he wrote me back a really long email. And within a couple of months, the advisory board was born. And that was where I got my first chance. Well, my first, I'm going to have dinner with Jay Thompson moment. I think it was in Seattle, late 2012, September 2012. My brokerage was open 7 years at the time. And you, I think you guys kind of met us in the lobby and we all had dinner together.
Yeah.
And, your impressions, the success of the Premier Agents, I had eerily similar impressions. The first, though, that struck me was how amazingly humble the C-level executives were at Zillow about the industry. They were not, we're going to take over the world. They were, we're tech guys. You're real estate people. We want to do this the right way.
Yep.
We have thoughts, but again, we're tech, you're real estate. So this is what we're thinking. You tell us your thoughts. And then part 2, I at the time was spending $300 a month on Zillow. There were people in the room that were spending $15,000 and $20,000 and $30,000 a month with massive return on investment in that room. Talk about a humbling experience. Like, wow.
Yeah. And there's data like that I wish I could have shared in detail to some of the detractors. People are like, these claims like, oh, only loser agents use Zillow, only new agents use Zillow, it doesn't work. And I wanted to say so much. If it doesn't work, why does Joe Schmo over there stroke a $30,000 check every month and has for years? You're going to do that if it doesn't work? Really?
Come on.
Yeah. I mean, don't be stupid, right? freedom of speech, not a license to be stupid. Don't be stupid. I mean, obviously it works. It doesn't work for everybody. No, nothing. Show me something that works for everybody.
No, it's all in the execution, and it's all in following best practices.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I learned a lot in the room with those people,
They're
and
good people.
I'm friends with most of them still.
Sure.
And but man, the brilliance of the people in that room was utterly spectacular. And I'm really okay with my competitors thinking that my business model is baloney. I'm really fine with that, because, you know, go do your thing. You go do your newspaper ads, go do your open houses, which are fine too, or you know, whatever. But man, it's fine if my competitors want to do old bullshit. I will do the new stuff, right? So all through this time, we're coming out of the housing crash.
Yep.
And I would imagine in Arizona, you guys took it on the chin, because that seems to be where it's like almost more cartoonish.
Yeah, it was brutal.
How did you survive that? And I know therapeutically you blog, right?
Yep.
But we're talking about black ink every month except your first month in the worst real estate market of our lifetimes.
Yeah, you know, people told me I was crazy for starting a brokerage when we did. They're like, dude, you're starting your brokerage on the at the top of the downslope. And they were right. You look at a chart, I can point to the Phoenix real estate market where it went boom. And I'm like, that's right, where I started Thompson's Realty. Part of that was because that was the plan. I'm going to be a sales agent for 3 years. I'll be eligible to take my broker's test, and I'll do that. And I did it. And my overriding philosophy was always customer experience, customer experience, customer experience. I knew that no matter what the market was doing, somebody today wants to buy or sell a house. That's the way it has always been. I bought my first house in 1983, and I assumed an 18% mortgage, right? And 2 years later, I sold that house and somebody reassumed the same 18% mortgage. So if people buy houses when the interest rate is 18%, they'll buy houses and sell houses when prices. People need a place to live. There's always somebody buying a house. So that was kind of my philosophy. There's always someone buying or selling a home. I just have to find them and help them buy or sell a home.
To that point, and I put it a little bit differently, and I say this to my agents, this living indoors thing, it's not a fad. It has legs. People like waking up in the morning, not instantaneously knowing what the weather is.
Right.
You know, people like climate control.
Yep.
You
the
know,
coffee pot that plugs in the morning is way better than a campfire in a tent.
And don't get me started on plumbing. Right? I mean, plumbing
is cool.
God bless the Romans. That's all I can say. Plumbing is cool. That's another J. Thompson quote I'm going to put. Plumbing is cool. So yeah, people live indoors. People have to live somewhere. The biggest economic force, in my opinion, that got us out of the Great Recession was the uterus. I mean, how much longer are we going to live in your parents' basement? I want to have a baby. I want to put down roots. I don't care what prices are going. We're going to live there for 15 years. We're buying a house this year. And I think after 08, 09, 10, 11, that's when the pent-up demand started to come back. And, of course, the underpinnings of the economy got healthier as well. But, yeah. So you knew people were going to live somewhere. We just had to be there and catch the ball.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was rough. Would I have rather been in a big, giant, booming market? Well, of course. But I have no control over that. So, it is what it is, and you deal with it. And I also thought in my head, you know what, if we can make it through this cycle, and that's exactly, I worked in semiconductors. I told you how cyclical that was. I was used to being in a cyclical business. You know what always happens after a downturn? An upturn. That's what the cycle looks like. It's down, it's up, it's down, it's up. Just had to wait it out. Now, of course, the question a lot of people ask is, when's it going to go up? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know it's going to change. It's cyclical. By definition, it has its ups and downs. You just got to ride out the down and ride on the good.
So 2 things got me through that, to that point. Yes, this is, if I can make it through this, I'm going to be lean and mean the rest of my career. And the second thing is that I read somewhere at the time, and now, of course, this is a big reality, Warren Buffett invested an enormous amount of money in brokerage.
Yeah.
And if Warren Buffett thought that this thing had a future, I probably was in the right place too. Yeah. That got me.
He's a pretty smart guy with a pretty good track record when it comes to investing.
There's a rumor.
Yeah.
There's a rumor. He's doing okay. So we are, this is going really fast, and I'm not getting nearly through all of my questions, but a couple of things. So you retired from Zillow, what, about
4 years ago today was my last day at Zillow. Today.
Happy anniversary, brother.
Well,
That's
you.
Good. Happy anniversary. And you're not really retired.
I call it selectively retired, because I can
selectively retired, living life on your own terms, which you have earned in spades. And so I want to talk about our common work on the Beverly Carter Foundation.
Yes, please.
So if you want to, this is something, and Emmy will agree with this. A lot of people will agree with this. If you want to have a winning team, you get Jay Thompson on the team, and you don't have to really twist people's arms that all realtors have a right to come home safe from work. But we also know that there was people that were skeptics about more safety in the industry because, I don't know, they're a big husky guy and they felt that they were fine. They didn't feel threatened and everything like that. But I will tell you, you probably know this, that when I was, around 29, 30 years old, I had a client roundhouse me at his kitchen table because his neighbor told him that I didn't get back to him about a voicemail hotline that I had set up attached to his sign. Roundhoused me, wailed on me. And I was lucky to get out of there with my stuff. And I have another colleague, the guy that trained me in this business that I went to college with, black belt in Taekwondo, was beaten so severely in his office that he needed plastic surgery, ripped eyelid, concussion, just brutal, right? So it's not just, 90-pound girls that are in danger. And it's not just physical violence that we're concerned with. It's about peace of mind. It's about harassment. It's about inappropriate stalking, all of that stuff. So Beverly Carter Foundation, founded by our mutual friend, Carl, who had to live with the unspeakable, the unthinkable tragedy of losing his mother under brutal circumstances. And I think he said this to you too. He wanted to take a negative and turn it into a positive. And speak to me your point of view about this work. Broker, dad, all of that.
Yeah, that's, first, God bless Carl Carter, Chad, Kim, and the whole Carter family. I have so much admiration for someone that can. I think I would have just crawled under a rock and cried. He's a remarkable human being. But I remember to this day the first time my wife went out to, I think it was showing a home. I don't remember the first time she walked out the door to go meet a quote unquote client. Was it really a client? No, they exchanged a couple of emails, and she's like, "Okay, I'm going to go meet this guy at this house." And I sat there the entire time going, she's going to die. She's going to get choked, raped, beat, robbed. I mean, all I could think of was negative. And, this was, we had phones, cell phones, but I don't even know if you could text back then. It was weird. There was pagers. It was a different time.
It was.
We weren't in instant, immediate communication. And, an hour later, she comes home and goes, "Well, that was cool. Blah, blah, blah. This is, just another day at the office." And I was like, whew. But every time she would walk out of the house, I I didn't quake in fear for her, but it was in my head about what could happen. So it's been a thought of mine since I've been in real estate.
Yeah.
And it took a long time before I realized what you were just talking about, that it's not just a female thing. It's a human thing, right?
Human thing.
And then I started, as I wrote more, I paid more attention to real estate news, looking for blog topics. And I was blown away by how frequently some tragic story would come. And it's not always, Beverly Carter was like the epitome, kidnapped, duct taped, thrown in a trunk, killed, like at the peak of shitty things that can happen to real estate agents. But there was so much, other things, person assaulted at an open house, a new home representative, someone punched them in the face, just all these. And I'm like, good grief. And, and you and I have said, and everybody in the Beverly Carter Foundation said, I don't want people to be paranoid and in terror of their job every day, because that's a miserable way to live. But you've got to be aware. It happens, and anytime a story comes up, then the brokerages chime in. Well, we're going to start doing this. I'm like, start now? You're going to start? Why? What have you been doing for the past 10, 15, 20 years?
Yeah, it's been a predominantly female industry for the better part of our lifetimes. Not that it's a female thing, but, do you listen to your agents?
Right.
Right. Has no one ever said anything to you? So, Ashley Oakland, as I recall, unsolved.
Yep.
Department of Labor states that about 15 agents on average a year die in their line of work. Okay. That is more than New York City cops who die in their line of work every year. And we're talking about a city of 9 million and cops and, hazardous work and all of that. And the getting home safe thing is not just about violence. It is about harassment. It is about, assault, stalking. People have to be able to go to work, come home, peace of mind, and have sleep at night knowing that their agency over their safety is respected. And I think we still have in this industry a ways to go. It's interesting. Carl asked, is our work done? And I'm paraphrasing. It doesn't do Carl's work justice to distill it to that brief question, but the answer overwhelmingly is no. The industry from the top down has to do more to ensure that agents are mindful, are safe. And the other thing that kind of sticks in my craw is the voices that say, if somebody has it in for you, you're not going to be able to stop them all the time. And like, my answer is, well, we don't have to make it so fucking easy for them.
Right. Exactly.
We don't have to we can make it really hard.
Yeah.
To harm someone or take away their peace of mind. So it is God's work, in my opinion. It is the work of the angels. And I'm glad to collaborate with you on that.
Same.
And
Same.
Carl is a freaking saint. He's a good man. I hope to have him on here soon.
That'd be great.
All right. I want you to talk to me, and we're going to shift gears from one of the saddest things to one of the very happiest things. What's it like being a grandpa?
Oh, dude, it's the best. I said for years, I told my kids, when you will never believe how much you love your kid. It's indescribable. I tell you what, and I love my 2 kids to death, but they got some competition now. That granddaughter is just precious. And the coolest thing about it, it's like you get all the good stuff, right, with parenting and none of the bad stuff, none of the literally shitty stuff. I was holding her, right, and she's looking at me and her arms are waving. And she's a month old, right? She's just a larva, can't really do anything, but we're making eye-to-eye contact. And the next thing I know, I hear, feel, and smell what she's done in her diaper, which was impressive for something that weighs like 6 pounds to excrete like 9 pounds of poo. And all I did was hand her over to mommy and said, here you go. Not my problem. It's awesome. It is the
You
best.
paid your dues in that department, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but it's the coolest. I think I have a pretty good vocabulary and I love to write. I cannot describe what it's like to see your baby holding their baby. It's just, I have no words for it other than unbelievable.
Well, one word will stick with me going forward, and that is larva. I think the larva is something I almost want to buy her a onesie that says Grandpa's little larva on it, because that is so you, dude. That is so you. That is so you. All right. How did you get into fishing? I mean, all guys like to fish. It's the sun, the boat. What's not to like?
I get that question a lot because a lot of people are like, dude, I've known you for years. I never even heard you talk about fishing.
There's no water in Texas.
But
you got to go to the coast. I mean, I don't think of Texas and water, but town lake, whatever. But
my grandfather in Tennessee used to take me fishing all the time. I lived in Tennessee when my dad was stationed in Korea and then Vietnam. So when I was in kindergarten and when I was in the 3rd grade, I lived in Tennessee, and I'm talking down south, miles from the Alabama border, country, bumpkin relatives. That's where my mom and dad were born and raised. And my grandfather, my mom's dad, used to take me fishing when I was little, and I loved it from the get-go. Now, I think part of it was being with him, but I fell in love with the sport as a small kid and went way too long without doing any fishing. I never got to go salmon fishing when I lived in Seattle, which is a crime because they do have salmon there. I didn't have time. I didn't know anybody, blah, blah, blah. But I used to fish down when I lived in Austin and when I lived in San Antonio. When I went to high school, I would come down here being the Texas Gulf Coast where I am now, to fish. And I loved it. And I walked out on this beach that's on the Gulf of Mexico. I'm pointing, which means nothing, but it's 5 miles down the road. And I walked out there the first time with my high school best buddy when I was 17 years old. And I said, dude, someday I'm going to retire here and I'm going to do nothing but fish. And I was 17 then, I'm 61 now and getting to live that life. So I love it.
I have a similar story. Not nearly as cool as yours though, but I grew up in a little neighborhood called the Indian Village, which was little ranches and capes. And across Pleasantville Road is a neighborhood called Chilmark, which interestingly enough is referenced in Mad Men as where the Drapers lived. That's a continuity error because the Drapers lived in Ossining and Chilmark's in Briarcliff. Same town, different village, long story. New York's messed up. But I would ride my bike through Chilmark and the houses were bigger. And I thought to myself, this is where I'll live when I'm older because this is where the rich people live. And I really wish, Jay, that I rode my bike through a more affluent neighborhood than this. I love it here. I live in Chilmark. It came true, but I really wish I rode my bike through a more affluent neighborhood. All right. So you've lived a lot of places. All right. And nobody, by the way, we've said this before, nothing makes an agent better like moving themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Right. You've said it. Other folks have said it. Agents, if we move, it makes us far more empathetic with what people are going through. Because when you think about it, buying a house, selling a house, it is borderline trauma.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's the largest financial event of most people's lives. It is multi-layered and complex. Mistakes are crazy expensive. And you're going to be living there and living with the consequences of your decisions. And this is infrequent. Some people only do this once or twice in their lives.
Yep.
So the stress is crazy. And agents have the audacity to be like, oh, this person's so clingy. Well, yeah, he's going through trauma.
Yep.
I digress. So moving makes us better agents. You lived in Seattle. You lived in Austin. You've lived in where else? You lived in Tennessee for a while, right?
Tennessee, Denver, Colorado, or a suburb of Denver. I lived in Brooklyn, New York, under the shadow of the Verrazano Narrows Bridge.
I remember that. And by the way, when I have mentioned the Yankees of the 1970s, you have chimed in because I guess that was then.
Yep.
So you were.
We moved to Brooklyn the year after the amazing Mets won the World Series.
So that was 70.
70. Yep.
1970.
Yeah.
So the Miracle Mets were 1969. They won the pennant again in 73. They were pretty good until about 76, and then long story, Yankee fan, so I can't give a objective rendering of that. Tell me the best thing that you remember from living in Brooklyn.
Ooh, that's a good question. I had these. I don't know if it's the best thing. It was the most interesting thing to me. Even then, I went to a school off base. Right, we lived on an army base, but that army base had no elementary school. Some do. This one didn't. So I went to PS 104, Public School 104 in Brooklyn.
Yes,
and my buddies were born and raised, 2 blocks from that school. And I remember I would go to school like on Monday, and people were like, "Hey, what'd you do this weekend?" "Oh, my aunt and uncle came into town, so we went to the Empire State Building and the UN and, did the tourist thing." And I remember my buddies, this is in 4th and 5th grade, going, "I've never been to the Empire State Building." I'm like, "How the hell have you never been to the Empire State Building, dude? You can almost see it from here." But it was such a little local neighborhood, right? Everything was there. The little bodegas, the stores, the shops, the restaurants. There's like this 4-block area around PS 104 that was just almost like its own country. And I just thought that was fascinating and really, really cool. Now, it was what I saw the Twin Towers being constructed. They weren't done by the time we left New York, but I watched them, they were just skeletons basically going up.
Yep.
And I remember being fascinated by that. But just the whole big city, the people and the traffic and the great, stuff everywhere was like nothing I moved from Tennessee, from BFE Hicksville, Tennessee in 3rd grade to Brooklyn, New York in 4th grade. So there's this big shift in everything, but it was a great place to live. I wish I kept up with my buddies, but again, that was a different time. We didn't have Facebook, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So,
didn't have Facebook, didn't have,
what happened to those guys and how their lives turned out.
Well, some of them are still in Brooklyn. I promise you that.
I'm probably living 3 blocks from PS 104.
Very well could be. Favorite thing about Denver?
The Denver Broncos.
Yeah, you are a big Broncos fan.
We had there was a soldier on this army base in Aurora, Colorado, that had season tickets to the Broncos, and they got transferred out. So my dad literally wrote his name on a piece of paper, literally put it in a hat, and they pulled his name out of the hat to get those season tickets. So we had season tickets for 2 years to the Denver Broncos. This was before John Elway's my age, so he wasn't playing, obviously. I was in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in Denver, and we had tickets when I was in 7th and 8th grade. It was Craig Morton, Floyd Little. And the Broncos sucked, but they sold out every single home game. And we were in the south stand, the south end zone, the south stand super fans. And, you're in 7th and 8th grade. That's an impressionable time. So I've been a Bronco fan ever since then. And it was the year after we left was the first time they went to the Super Bowl.
Okay. So they were in the 78 Super Bowl. Yeah. So you must have left around 76.
76.
Yeah. So, Super Bowls are from the prior season, so 77 season. But Craig Morton used to play for the Giants, and I was happy to see. I was rooting for the Broncos that Super Bowl because, if you're a Giants fan, you hate the Cowboys anyway. Sure. But I was really rooting for Craig because he was an ex-Giant, and they got their head handed to them. Yeah. But look,
hey, Super Bowl.
What was the coach's name?
Tom. I should know that.
I should know this. Look at this, 2 old guys. What
What
was the guy's name? Because I know he was on the Giants in the 50s, coaching with Vince Lombardi. So somebody will tell us, and whatever. But great guy. Guy wore the hat.
Super Bowl 32, when they finally won a Super Bowl and beat the Packers. I'll admit it, I cried. At the end of that game, I had tears.
Oh, Elway winning his first Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Oh, I was happy.
After play where he's running the ball towards the goal line and he gets pounded and he spins around and jumps right back up. At that moment, I said, "These guys are." That was a great Super Bowl, though. That
was
back and forth and back and forth. But as a Broncos fan, it was a weepy moment at the end of that game.
Yeah. So, and he had to have been what, 38, 39, and to see him pop back up like he was made of flubber, it was like, this guy is playing to win.
Yep.
This guy, he may not go back, and he's going to leave it all on the field. They'll have to wheel him off the field.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a good memory. All right, so we're over an hour now. It feels like 5 minutes.
It does.
The last time you and I were in the same room, we were in Seattle.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, we were in Seattle. Yep. You met Allison. We had breakfast together. It was good catching up. The next time you're in New York, we're taking you to dinner.
Cool.
And I can't thank you enough, and I can't tell you what a privilege it is to be able to sit and bullshit with you for an hour and just listen to you talk. I
feel exactly the same about you, Phil. It's been great. Yeah, I'm like looking at my clock going, holy crap, that was an hour?
Yeah. I think there's a little pressure here to get you back to writing some stuff here because Tim's just put up your blog post that you haven't.
I really need to. When he showed that screenshot, and I'll make this quick. That last post with that sailboat, that was a trip that I took from Hawaii to Palmyra Atoll, which is an island in the middle of the Pacific. And that I was on that boat a year ago, which tells me by just looking at that picture, that's the post I wrote about going on the trip. I have not posted to that blog since then, and that's a dadgum shame. I'm going to fix that.
You possess the power to fix that. You just wrote something for Inman recently about Zillow and Front Page, which we did front door. I forgot what the hell they are. One of those guys, corporate fuckers. And we can see on Inman and other places. So thank you. This will go in the books, and we'll do it again sometime, brother.
Absolutely. We can do it again. We didn't talk about the Texas Longhorns either. Go Horns. They've got some issues with football already, and it hasn't even started. But we got lots. We can talk. I can talk to you anytime, Phil. We could have another 1 hour conversation this afternoon.
Talk about completely different shit.
And tomorrow and the next day. So I would love to come back on because I love talking to you, man. You're a solid human being.
Thank you. We'll do a part 2. All right, Timothy, take it away. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks.